It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of Paramour, Cirque Du Soleil, Oslo, The Humans, Totally Bent, and Indecent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. Well, here we are on Times Square, where it all happens.
I know.
And, oh my goodness, someone is just offering me a tour. Yes, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Yes, and people are yelling behind us, and people are making balloon animals over there, and there are naked ladies behind Miriam, who is doing
topless.
Our camera. Well,
yes, Miriam is my daughter, by the way.
Yes, and we will show
she
her
is
picture
clothed.
later.
Behind us is the legendary TKTS booth, where you can get tickets for half price.
Yes, if you can get to them.
If you can get, the lines have always been very long.
Welcome to Pandemonium.
Yeah, but you know the thing I've been covering. Well, I've been going to the theater here for close to 50 years.
I'm not going to say.
And a friend of mine who lived here 30 years ago came back this weekend.
Oh.
And, for the first time in really 30 years was walked around Times Square, to see all the change. And it really has changed.
Oh, God, completely.
Now, when I was growing up, you had, a lot of strip clubs. You had the Howard Johnsons, which was here forever. It never changed until they knocked it down and
fried clams.
Delicious ice cream.
Fried clams,
You had arcades, pinball, early video games. My favorite was Spy Hunter. And in 30 years, the Toys R Us, which was one of the most wonderful retailers ever, has come and gone, unfortunately.
Why are we reviewing
what?
this? Why are we talking about
Because
this?
we're here, so we're...
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Just to let you know that things haven't changed all that much.
When I was a little girl,
yes,
my father would bring the baby, my brother the baby, who's a psychiatrist and a lawyer, up in the carriage, and we would walk from 21st Street, where we lived, to 42nd Street, and we would walk up and down 42nd Street, and we would stop in Howard Johnson's, and we would get a soda, and we would sometimes go to the movies and do all of those things, Right. We never thought of it as a bad place. It was only when Giuliani told us how terrible it was that we realized it was a terrible place.
Where between 7th and 8th on 42nd Street, which is now a very crowded place, at one point
it was
the theaters
it
was honky-tonk. The theaters, there were a couple of electronic stores. There were the former Broadway theaters showed either kung fu or porno. I mean,
or regular movies.
And
there were one or two that showed regular movies.
No,
yes,
not
I
then.
saw Pinky on 42nd Street. It was a revival. I won't tell you the year because I can't remember.
Not in the 70s and the 80s.
My son used to come up to that same arcade, and he got mugged.
Yeah, you could get mugged back then. You could get pickpocketed.
I am a New York baby.
There were
I'm a Broadway
three-card
baby.
Montes. You could get but one thing that has changed, back then they had all these strip clubs and peep shows. Now you can see that outside.
That's true, but we're not going to show it. But the one thing I will say is that I'm a Broadway baby. I never thought it was honky-tonk. I loved it. I never was afraid here. Now I can't stand the tourists, to be honest with you. Sorry, tourists.
You really are a Broadway baby.
I am a Broadway baby.
People ask what I miss. I don't miss the pornography. I don't miss the drugs. I don't miss the honky-tonk. I do miss the arcades. I miss the Howard Johnsons. I miss the intimacy. You're right, because now it is so crowded.
Oh,
I used to think of this as my private backyard. I mean, if there were a couple of thousand people.
Right.
Now a couple of 100,000 people.
Right.
I remember when they built the Marriott Marquis Hotel, which we're sitting right next to. I remember I'd go in. It wasn't quite completed, but they'd let you in the lobby, and I rode the glass elevators for the first time. And I remember when the theater opened, they demolished 3 Broadway theaters.
They did. Speaking of which, we should start talking about what's going on in the Broadway
Let me just tell
theaters.
you one story to show you that maybe Times Square hasn't changed quite as much as we used to.
Okay.
My friend was walking down Times Square, and she saw a woman's wig, with curls and a ponytail on the ground. And this man, who was definitely a man, came over, picked up the wig, put it on his head, and walked away.
And that says what?
That says that maybe things in Times Square haven't changed.
That's the world.
That's
nothing to do
that
with
is
Broadway.
Times Square.
No, honey.
That is
That's
Times Square.
Okay, speaking of the world.
All right. Speaking of Times Square, let's talk about Paramour. This is Cirque Du Soleil, which has done so beautifully, around the world, just not in New York.
Keep going.
Not in New York. So they've tried different venues, and now they are trying a Broadway theater and they're trying to do a Broadway musical. So what do we end up with? We end up with a moderately decent circus, a moderately decent Broadway musical, but neither really shines. This is,
There is a word, and it might be Yiddish, I'm not sure, but the word that I'm thinking of is mishmash. Is that Yiddish? Am I making that up?
I don't think it's Yiddish.
Okay,
but
it's faux Yiddish.
It is a very appropriate term.
It's where you take two things that don't belong together and you try to make them, and they don't work.
But that's not necessarily true, because it's essentially what they did for the revival of Pippin, and that worked beautifully.
But that was not a mishmash. That was a very carefully orchestrated, just enough of the circus, just enough of the play, and it was a good play to start with. This is
I never thought it was a good play to start with, but I loved it.
I thought it was brilliant.
But
this is a derivative piece of old time. Let's get the producer and the girl and the guy. And the guy loves the girl, and the producer wants the girl, and that's the story. And it's as old as silent movies, and probably the theater, in Greece, and literally in Greece, back in the day, the Greek theater, and whatever. That's the story, and they can tart it up with 8 billion acrobats and people swirling around, and it doesn't make it a good story. They didn't know when to put this, and they didn't know when to do that. So behind every scene, there was somebody spinning in the air or turning somersaults.
Well, sometimes they do integrate it, and when they do, it works very nicely. But and you have the leading lady here, very nice singer, who is, let's see, her name is
Ruby Lewis.
Ruby, what an appropriate name for a musical like this, a woman named Ruby.
And we have Jeremy Kushner, who actually was Ren in Footloose, as the producer or director or whatever he was.
He's the very rich, very powerful producer who discovers her.
Right.
And then there's, of course, Ryan Bona as Joey, the young songwriter who's in love with her, and
And then 120 unnamed acrobats. I don't know who they were. One of them lives in my building. I believe I'll come up with
It's
her
like
name.
a circus out there.
Yes, it's like a circus right
But is it
here.
a good circus? And
I think her name is Miriam, as per our Miriam tonight.
But this was written, let's see, well, they don't say who wrote it here.
Yes, they do. You're on the wrong page.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page.
They,
Here we go. Bob and Bill, Guy Dubbock, and Mark Lessard are the composers. Andres Carlson is the co-composer. How many composers do they have on this thing? And they don't say who did the book here or anything like that.
They must somewhere, but we'll never find it because they've got 82 credits as well.
Yes.
It's too many cooks spoiling the broth or too many acrobats spoiling the show. Whatever way you want to put it. I know you liked it better than I did.
Yes, I did.
have assiduously avoided Cirque du Soleil after the first one I ever saw because enough, you've seen one, you've seen them all is the way I've thought about it. This was different, and so I gave it a shot.
Right.
And I wanted very much to like it. And yes, there's talent. There's always talent. It's just somebody didn't know how to make it cohesive. There's no cohesiveness to this.
All right. It gelled, but not as good as well as it should have, especially when you compare it to Pippin. That said, definitely enjoyable, definitely worth seeing, and I'm going to give it 3 playbills.
I would go for 2.5. I mean, people are going to spend money because they want to see Cirque du Soleil in New York rather than having to go to Las Vegas, but it's really a waste of time for me.
One of these days, I would like to see it in Las Vegas because it's done a heck of a lot better there than it has in New York. All right, moving on.
Does that mean you want to go to Las Vegas, Charlie?
I actually do want to go to Las Vegas. Yes, I've never been there.
You know how much hotter it is there than it is here right now? Just in case you weren't sure.
Not by much, actually, and it's not as humid.
Okay, I want to talk about a play that's set in the country.
Didn't say I wanted to leave tonight.
Right. I want to talk about a play that's opening at Lincoln Center that is set in a country that is not known for being hot, Oslo in Norway. This is an historic play by J.T. Rogers, who wrote one of our favorite plays in past, Blood and Gifts, which we also loved. That one was about the Middle East and various things.
Well, that was more about Afghanistan.
What was about it? Okay, yes, it was about the war in Afghanistan. This is about the peace accord that took place between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat.
Right.
But what it is the background. It's something called the Oslo Accord. I never knew what that phrase meant. You hear so many things.
Well,
in
it
life.
meant that they mostly took place in Oslo.
Well, what it meant was that there were people in Oslo who set wheels in motion to make peace in the Middle East happen. a concept, if you talked about it, people would say, no, you're kidding. How would that, how many Jews are there in Oslo? Count them on your hand,
About as many Jews as Arabs, I would imagine.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So anyway, it's so brilliantly staged, written, acted. Jefferson Mays plays the Norwegian fellow, and Jennifer Ailey plays his wife, and T. Ryder Smith plays the
They're basically
attaché.
diplomats and academics
Yes.
who have secretly started negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
And the Israelis and the Palestinians will not allow the top people to become involved until everything is ironed out. So all of these non-entities, so to speak, are doing all this work and ultimately get no credit for it later on until this play comes along. All of this information exists, but it took J.T. Rogers to come and put it into this beautifully
Right. Now,
dramatic...
we have to point out, as does the playwright, that this is a work of fiction. It's based on fact.
Yes.
The people in this play, many of them are still alive today.
And they speak... J.T. Rogers met the Norwegian
Yes.
guy, and that's how this whole play got
But
started.
again, this is speculation.
Yes.
Some of it may have happened, some of it may have not. Again,
It all happened, but not necessarily this way.
not necessarily the way, but it is a very insightful, very interesting, well-balanced.
Okay, I have a couple of backstage stories. Okay, Daniel Jenkins, who was in Big River, he was the kid in Big River, is now playing a diplomat of some,
Okay.
gravitas, shall we say. And there is a the most important Jewish member of the team, Joel Singer, is played by Joe Saravo, who is not Jewish. Well, maybe he is, I don't know, I never asked him. But the thing is that Joe Saravo and I co-starred in a letter of agreement contract back in the day, I won't say how long ago, of Stage Blood by Charles Ludlam. And we had to audition for Ludlam in order to be able to be allowed to play the roles. And the audition consisted of us saying hello, and he said,
I'm
okay,
going
fine.
to assume this was before the Toys R Us opened on Times Square.
What year did you have to give me the year? What year did the Toys R Us open? I don't know. It's while I was still acting, Charlie, and I stopped acting in 1980, so you can figure it out for yourself, okay? But in any case, Joe and I have been friends for many, many years. He was in Light in the Piazza. He played the father. And it's wonderful to see him still working and doing all this wonderful work. Danny Oreskes is someone that I know from down in Louisville. He's a regular actor in Louisville. It's a wonderful cast. There's a lot of doubling.
It's long. It is 3 acts.
It's 3 acts.
3 hours.
And you almost don't notice it. I noticed it almost because I have a physical condition that made it a little hard. But it's Bartlett Sher did this, and he also did Blood and Gifts.
And it keeps your attention. He also did The King and I and Fiddler, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about this particular
Very versatile
work.
guy.
Yes, he's worked with this writer and some of these actors before.
You'll have to learn how to live with Jefferson Mays, only playing one role.
Yes, but beautifully.
Yes.
And just an incredible story. It gives you back faith in the ability of human beings to do this if they want to or when they can.
Right. Interestingly, the 3 people you will not see portrayed in this show are Yitzhak Rabin, Yasser Arafat, and Bill Clinton. And,
Except in a picture at the end.
Yes, at the end with the famous handshake on the White House. As anyone who's followed this even remotely knows, basically the deal didn't go through because... Well, Yasser...
It's the Middle East, Jake. It's the Middle East.
No, it was Yasser Arafat who, after getting 98% of what he wanted, still couldn't close the deal. So...
Well, the answer is it's the Middle East. But it's a play to be seen. It's a play of ideas. I don't know that it could move only because it's a large cast. I don't know how many people are interested in really serious theater, although I know you're going to be talking about one in a minute. But I would give this 5 playbills in a heartbeat. For 3 hours of real, honest-to-God theater, contemporary writing, new stuff, not revival.
I think I would go for 4, with 4. But Lincoln Centers has had a good year. This year.
Yeah.
Between this and...
Did I hold this one up? I don't know. Did I hold this up? Okay, I held it up in the right place. Okay. We're outside, guys. The heat is getting to me.
Yes, it is.
And the next one you're going to do is...
I am doing it. I think I'm doing The Humans.
Yes, you're doing The Humans.
All right, well, The Humans is a more at-home play, shall we say. This is the play that won the Tony Award. It won this, it won that. It won everything.
Last year it won the Drama Desk Award. This year it won the
This
Tony
year it won the
Award.
Tony Award. Last
Joe
year it was
Mantello-
off Broadway. Joe Mantello directed it.
And as I said, I thought he deserved it for
Stephen
Blackbird rather than...
Karam wrote it. I agree. I think that was a better directing job. This is basically about a family reunion in a New York apartment.
Blake family reunion,
The
I will tell
Blake
you.
family.
Yes.
Oh.
I spoke to Stephen Karam about that. No. Hey, any dysfunctional family is about the Blake family, but that's
Okay.
another story.
And it's an apartment, and unlike many apartments New York City apartments we've seen on a Broadway, this one looks like it's a duplex, but it's pretty sparse and pretty run down.
It's in Chinatown.
Yeah.
Jake.
There's the daughter and her husband, and they've invited the parents from Pennsylvania, and I think a couple of other relatives have come in. And it's basically they're spending Thanksgiving together, and a lot of revelations develop. Some
It's like an
that are
artichoke.
good, and some are a little artificial.
Yeah, it's like an artichoke, though. It's all the things that are revealed.
You have the cast on your phone, right?
Oh, I did have. Well, the main stars and the people who won the Tonys are the veteran actors in the group. Reed Birney and Jane Hoodishell, who play the husband and wife. Mind you, I found
the senior husband
the
and
senior
wife.
husband and wife. And mind you, I found that to
the
be the
parents.
most incongruous grouping of all, because Reed and she, I don't think would ever wind up being together. But people change over time, so I don't know.
They seem to be together, and they go through a crisis during the play. I don't want to give that
we don't
away.
want to do that. But then the younger people are very, very interesting. And as soon as my phone comes up here with this, all right. So it's Cassie Beck is the older sister, Arian Moyed as the boyfriend, the non-traditional boyfriend, if you will, in this cast of very new American.
And Sarah Steele, who I absolutely adored on The Good Wife, is the girl who, with her boyfriend, is hosting this. And
Yes, and Liz
wonderful,
Mackay.
wonderful performances.
Liz Mackay, who was one of the original sisters in that wonderful Southern play. With
Steel
Peter
Magnolias?
McNichol. No, with Peter McNichol. You know the play I'm talking about.
You're going to have to give me more to go on.
I can't.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking for a Southern play with sisters.
And Liz Mackay was one of them. Okay. We'll move on from there. I always do this when I try to show how clever I am. I always screw up. Okay, so I know. Well, that's the smartest thing you could do. So, do you want to talk about what you thought about the play?
I enjoyed it. I was not as enamored of it as most of the theater community. They think it's, it's wonderful. It's, my God, it's the straight Hamilton, except that the cast is all white. And I think, it's a decent family drama, and I enjoyed it. Absolutely worth seeing. Really good cast. Tonys are well deserved.
I actually thought that it was phony from the get-go, and everybody made such a big thing about how naturalistic it was. But as you said in your little opening thing about it, a lot of things happen. Some of them real, and then some of them not. Some very phony. And that's the problem.
Or they feel phony at any rate.
They feel phony. They do.
Yes.
And I know Stephen Karam is a lovely young writer. He's done some other plays. I won't try to remember what they are because I don't have it in front of me. But the point of the story is that this is not his best play. And he's getting a lot of credit for this particular play when one of his other plays I thought was better.
Which one?
I just said I can't remember any of the titles of them, so I'm not going to be able to do that for you. But I was one of the very vocal minority who didn't care for this. I didn't care for it off-Broadway, and I didn't care for even more on Broadway, because it meant I had to sit through it a second time. Now, I will admit that it's
And you didn't like it any better the second time?
No, I didn't like it. I liked it less the second time. It was more forced the second time. And here's the thing. Every other play ever written is a dysfunctional family play, and that goes back to the Greeks. The Oresteia, you've got nothing but people killing and eating their children, and horrible, horrible things. Well, these people come pretty damn close. And so there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to this. Some people do it better than others. We've also got the entire 4 hours of Long Day's Journey or Long Day's Evening into night, on Broadway this season.
Yes.
And
also at Lincoln Center, wasn't it?
No, that was on Broadway.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was on Broadway. But my point being that there is nothing new under the sun when you get to a dysfunctional family play, unless it's something like August Osage County. which really hit
Okay, well that.
a bunch of buttons. you
Yeah,
know.
I have to say, comparatively,
Yeah.
this play pales.
Yeah, but I mean that's I just wanted to get.
But
that in
I would give it 3.5 playbills.
I didn't like it, and I really didn't like it, and I would say 3 maximum. Maximum. So I get to talk about a play I liked very much.
Did
and
you?
It's a play called Indecent.
Okay.
It was down at the Vineyard.
We are not talking about Leslie's love life here.
I'm going to open the playbill because if you'll notice, on the other side of the playbill, it's written in Hebrew. And that's correct, right? That is Hebrew?
That is Hebrew.
Okay. And the concept behind this play is that, and by the way, it's by Paula Vogel, who also wrote what I did last.
How I Learned to
How I
Drive.
Learned to Drive. Thank you.
And Mineola Twins.
And, which I loved. I loved Mineola Twins.
Really?
I'm probably the only person in
I-
the whole world who
I
loved that play. And Joe
despised it.
Mantello was in that play. Ha, ha, ha,
Yeah, so
ha.
was Swoosie Kurtz
So was
playing
Swoosie
twins.
Kurtz, right.
One flat-chested, one very.
Okay, but we're not talking about that now. Okay,
But
so
how I
just
Learned to
brought it up.
Drive, which I absolutely loved. I think a fabulous work. Mineola Twins, which I hated. And Indecent.
So Paula Vogel went back
Well, somewhere in the middle.
into the history of theater, and found
Yiddish
a
theater,
Yiddish
to be
play,
exact,
The Yiddish
yeah.
theater, to be exact, and found a play by Shimon Peretz. Was that who it was?
I don't think so.
Remember. Who's it? Help me out here. Based on. There's nothing in here about it. So.
Keep
Anyway,
talking.
found a play based on a Yiddish play that actually opened in the 20s here in New York and was closed because of an incident in the play where 2 women kiss. And this is a play about the putting on of that play. And it's magnificent. It's almost like a companion piece to Fiddler on the Roof because it's the theatrical history of the tradition of what is. You know, New York had a vibrant Yiddish theater for many, many years. Up and down 2nd Avenue were Yiddish theaters. The Adlers played, Paul Muni played, Boris Tomaszewski played, who was Robert Tilson Thomas's great-grandfather. You know, I mean, all of this wonderful history. And it's all encapsulated in this play.
No.
Okay, well,
This was a cliche on
I'm sorry.
Siskel and Ebert show, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm going to. Leslie, did we see the same play? Because
I hope so.
I think Paula Vogel was fascinated with the lesbian romance scene in this play. This play was called God of Vengeance,
Right.
and I actually have seen it, and it is about a Jewish whorehouse owner who has it in the basement of his home. He runs a brothel. And he has a wife who is a former employee, shall we say, and they have a daughter who is pure. And in order to keep the purity, the man, using his profits from the brothel, buys a Torah scroll, a Sefer Torah, a very holy book, the Jewish 5 books of Moses. This is done on parchment, hand written, a very holy Jewish object that you would find in synagogues. And ultimately, his daughter falls. She is no longer pure. She is no longer a virgin, I think. And she develops a romance with one of his other employees. And this is the scene this is the part of the play that fascinates Vogel. She replays it over and over, and she replays the play's last scene over and over.
But she replays
and she
it.
gives,
Now wait.
let me finish.
But-
And she shows the play went to here, the play went to there, the play went to New York. Then finally the play was off Broadway, apparently with the same cast and crew for years. And then finally it goes on Broadway. And that's when the lesbian romance is out. The playwright agrees to it for some reason. And, he at one point, he loved this play so much, and then he disowns it for reasons I don't quite understand.
But that's not what this play is about. This play is about, it's not just about that scene. I mean, you make it sound as if that's the only,
that
that's
really,
your impression.
to me, seemed to be the whole emphasis
could
of
I
it.
finish a sentence,
By
please?
all
I let you
means.
talk, now I want my turn.
Oh,
She emphasizes that scene because that's the reason that the play was closed, not for any other reason. And the closed-mindedness of the concept of the time of oh my God, a lesbian anything was to be considered just a shanda, except
Right.
that wouldn't be the word that anybody would
yeah,
have
but
used.
then she goes on, and the play runs on Broadway, and is a flop.
Yes.
And the consensus is not because the play wasn't closed because they They had the scene. The play was closed because they took out the scene and it wasn't no longer interesting and no one wanted to see it. They took out the romance
But it's so
of the play.
intriguing that this man, this learned and religious man, would write a play about this subject. I mean, don't you find?
Well, was he a
why
learned?
don't you go back and
was he a learned and religious man?
Well,
that-
well, he certainly was a learned man. It wasn't his only play. He was a famous playwright.
He was, well, when you say learned, do you mean educated or learned or a Jewish scholar?
I didn't say a Jewish scholar. I said learned. I meant he was educated.
So you mean he was educated? Okay, well.
And
Lots of educated men wrote a play like this.
And he was a man, and he wrote a play that really revolved around the love story of two young women. And he did it very well.
Less so than you think.
Now, here's the
Again,
other-
I'm going on a very vague memory of the play.
Here's the thing that I found interesting. My kids live in Connecticut. They bought me tickets. This went to New Haven originally. And they bought me a ticket to come up and visit, and I got sick. So I missed it. I never thought it was going to come to New York. And bingo, it came to New York to the Vineyard.
There you go.
Kudos to the Vineyard for bringing it down. Kudos for Rebecca Teichman, and the wonderful cast. It's a totally ensemble cast. You can name some people, but except for Stephen Rattazzi, I don't really know these actors.
Well, I would have to say Richard Topol. Well, I wonder if he's related to Chaim Topol, who's best known for his Tevye in the movies and on stage.
It's entirely possible, but I don't know.
As the stage manager, he's basically a tailor who becomes so fascinated with the play that he becomes the stage manager and he champions the play. One thing I do find interesting, the troupe, instead of settling in the United States, goes back to Europe, which
unfortunately is a mistake.
Turns out to be a big mistake because they go right in time for the Holocaust,
Exactly.
and they are still performing this wherever they can. And again, how much of this is factual, I do not know. But I didn't feel there was enough. I don't feel that this play
But if you look at
is
Paula
worth
Vogel,
it, and I don't feel that there's enough of the background in the Yiddish theater. I didn't see what you saw as far as that was
Okay,
concerned.
Paula
There was just so
Vogel-
much more to it than this play.
Paula Vogel, well, of course. But this particular play is the one that somebody went to the trouble of writing
Yeah.
a play about. And Paula Vogel won a Pulitzer Prize for a play about Shiksa in New England. The story of that young girl had nothing to do with being Jewish or anything else, and Paula Vogel went back to her roots for this particular play.
What are we talking about?
I'm talking
She won the
about
Pulitzer for How I Learned to Drive.
Yes, which had nothing to do with being Jewish or anything else. And
Correct.
here she went to a great deal of trouble to bring her own background into the theater, and I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Well, I don't know what her background is.
She's Jewish, and she's a lesbian.
Okay.
So for whatever, but he wasn't a lesbian, and he wrote the original story. So
Well, he may have been a lesbian in a male body.
how many playbills would you give it, Charlie?
I would give this 2.5, and I will say that as far as Paula Vogel was concerned, How I Learned to Drive is still an incredible work. This I was a little disappointed in. I was hoping to see a little more to it because, yes, we have certainly, we had Shuffle Along, which perhaps tried to do too much. I say this play doesn't try to do enough.
You're saying it as an historical play about
Yes,
a play. I see
yes.
what you're saying. Okay.
And I would give it 2.5 playbills. I was disappointed. Especially given the pedigree, I was hoping for more.
Okay. I totally disagree, and I would give it 4.5. I wish it were still playing. I wish it were able to move. I think it's a part of forgotten history of theater that I think everybody should know about. Not unlike The Golden Bride, which I hope we'll be talking about
I
on
hope so,
another
yes.
show. The more theater that can be rescued on any level from the past, I think
Absolutely.
is a wonderful thing.
No,
Not
it's-
just revivals, but plays about plays are very interesting. I
Yes.
think.
Yes. And unfortunately, the two we've had this year really were interesting, but they didn't.
Well,
yeah.
I think this one was
They're-
more successful
I
than
think-
Shuffle Along. It stayed the course. It didn't go all over the place.
I agree it was focused, but it needed to pull the lens back just a little.
Okay.
All right, moving on. The Total Bent. This is a play that I'm not going to spend too much time on. It was at the Public. The Public has had a very good year, but this was not one of their better plays. This was, I think, about 2 generations of preachers, both who use the type of language I wouldn't expect preachers to use.
These
And
are black preachers.
Black preachers, yes. And maybe if you're black, maybe you're into the gospel scene. I don't know. I saw Your Arms Too Short to Box with God which was this fabulous gospel musical about the story of Jesus. That was the first act, and then the second act was this wonderful gospel revival. I was into it. It was energetic. This, I don't know what was the point.
Well, let's start with who wrote it. Stu, who wrote Passing Strange, which was about the coming of age of a young musician and going to Europe to find himself, and fascinating. It went from the public to Broadway, and was a very focused play about this young man's life and his discovery of himself, and his distancing himself from his previous life, which also had to do with the church. So evidently the church plays a great deal of something in Stu's life. But this play, and the only person I know in this particular cast is that's not true. Bondi Curtis Hall and David Cale are two actors, one black, one white, that I know. The rest of the cast I did not know. But great singing, interesting songs. When they go back to telling the story, it makes no sense whatsoever. I'm not sure if the young man is running away from his father, running toward religion, running away from religion, trying to outdo his father.
He's basically doing what his father did. He's just taking it to the next level.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the point of it is, though. What is it?
I don't know what the point of it is either.
I don't really know.
I didn't care. I didn't understand what was going on. How this play got produced, I really will never understand.
Well, it got produced because I believe that the public is the public supports certain artists. After all, Lin-Manuel Miranda did his shows at the public.
What aside from Hamilton? That was at the public?
Was that not at the public?
Not off Broadway.
Well, anyway, I thought it was. I know it was off Broadway.
Yes, it was, but not at the public.
Okay.
I saw it there.
Where did we see it? If not at the public.
I don't know, but it wasn't at the public.
Okay, maybe Lincoln Center?
No, it wasn't at Lincoln Center.
Let it go.
It was somewhere that was not the public. I mean, we'll look it up, but it was somewhere that wasn't at the public or Lincoln Center.
But
probably see that schmuck who puts the lines on while we're talking. He'll probably have something to say about this.
The schmuck, okay.
That guy, yeah. That annoying fellow.
The public does support artists.
Yes.
And one of their artists is Stu. So when Stu comes in with it, they try to focus it as much as they can, and then they have to step back and.
And you know what? I am glad that they are doing that.
Yeah.
Because even though, and very often you can have some wonderful work. This was not the case.
The first play
one
was
playbill,
and
I'm not even sure it deserves that.
I give it 2 because I enjoyed the music very much, and I had a nice time bouncing along to the rhythms and whatnot. But I couldn't follow the story very well. I really couldn't.
Yeah.
And Bondi Curtis Hall, I did not know that he could sing. He's a wonderful actor. I've seen him in many films and television shows, and I've always liked his work.
Yes, they can sing, they can act. Give him some songs to sing and a play to act in, and I'm sure we'll be very impressed. And that is our show for tonight. And when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
When you go to Times Square, also look for us too on the aisle.
Or on the square. I don't think they have aisles out in Times Square.
Or on the very uncomfortable chair in this plaza. Yes. Okay.
We'll be the ones who look like us.
Yeah.